Have you ever noticed how the dating world seems to have rewritten its rules overnight? How women in their early 20s are suddenly drawn to men who have lived, who have experience, who carry themselves with a calm confidence that comes from time. And then, in contrast, there are women in their late 20s, sometimes even early 30s, often perfectly intelligent, successful, beautiful, but somehow overlooked, left behind, branded as leftover. And that word, it cuts deeper than anyone admits. It's whispered in family gatherings, joked about among peers, mentioned with pity by strangers. But the truth is far more complicated than any stereotype. These women, let's call them leftover, are not deficient. They are not broken. They are not desperate. But they are caught in a paradox. Society tells them they must reach a certain milestone by a certain age: marriage, settling down, finding someone to call their own. And yet, younger women seem to glide past those expectations, effortlessly attracting men who are older, more established, more experienced. Why does this happen? And why does it sting so badly for those who have been careful, patient, and deliberate? The first thing to understand is this: what younger women chase in older men is not always wealth or status. It's not always the house, the car, or the fancy dinner. It is stability, it is guidance, it is maturity. Younger women are drawn to the man who has seen life, who knows his value, who is unshaken by trivial drama, who understands his priorities, and most importantly, who understands theirs. Older women often have the same qualities. They have experience, they have maturity. But here is the paradox: by the time society labels them as leftover, they are expected to compete with youth itself. They are expected to make themselves desirable in ways that ignore the very qualities they have spent years cultivating. Youth is a weapon that even wisdom cannot always counter. And that is why the heartbreak happens. It is not failure. It is a structural imbalance in how desire is perceived and how social norms are enforced. And let's not ignore the emotions. When a woman sees a younger rival step into a space that once felt like her own, perhaps at work, in social circles, in romantic attention, it is disorienting. It triggers questions she never asked herself before. Am I too much? Too intense? Too demanding? Too old? These thoughts spiral because the world has trained her to measure worth externally rather than internally. And this is where most women falter, not because they lack value, but because they allow external validation to dictate their self-perception. The coping strategies vary. Some women retreat. They bury themselves in work, achievements, social proof, trying to recapture a sense of relevance that feels stolen. Others react impulsively, chasing younger men, compromising standards, hoping to prove that desire can be manufactured or forced. And yet, the women who cope most powerfully are those who redefine their worth outside of anyone's desire. These women stop competing with youth. They stop envying impulsive attraction. They begin to embrace the truth: maturity, wisdom, emotional intelligence, self-respect. These are qualities that cannot be faked, cannot be rushed, and cannot be measured by someone else's timeline. Here is a truth many overlook. Desire is a language, and younger women are fluent in certain dialects that older men understand instinctively. They can be playful, spontaneous, and uninhibited. That excitement sparks a kind of chemistry that is hard to replicate. But chemistry fades, depth lasts, experience lasts, and a woman who has lived, who has loved, who has cultivated resilience is capable of sustaining relationships that younger women simply cannot imagine. Yet society does not always give her the credit. She is judged for being selective, for setting standards, for insisting on reciprocity. But those are not flaws. They are armor, refined over years of trials and heartbreaks. Let's talk about the social implications. Families, friends, communities, they all notice the pattern. They notice the younger women being pursued and the older women being passed over. And they comment, often without empathy, why is she still single? What's wrong with her? She should compromise. And here is where society plays a cruel game. It brands the patient woman as incomplete while celebrating impulsive conquest. It flips desire on its head. And yet, women who understand this game begin to see it clearly. They realize that their value is not diminished by someone else's choice. It is not diminished by the fleeting allure of youth. It is not diminished by a man's temporary fascination with novelty. Coping, then, is not about mimicking youth. It is not about chasing attention. It is about refining self-awareness, about cultivating qualities that are rare: patience, integrity, calmness, wisdom, about building life on foundations that no fleeting attraction can shake. It is about recognizing that rejection is not a reflection of personal deficiency, but a reflection of timing, context, and compatibility. It is about understanding that the right person, the one capable of appreciating depth over sparkle, exists, and that finding them requires patience, not panic. And yet, coping is messy. It involves confronting insecurities. It involves rewriting internal narratives. It involves resisting the cultural pressure that says, if you are not married by 25, you are a failure. These messages are toxic. They are lies, and the strongest women are those who recognize the lie and refuse to internalize it. They reject the word leftover as an insult. They reclaim it as a badge of experience, a symbol of resilience. Emotionally, these women must navigate envy without shame. They must face their own fears of obsolescence without succumbing to bitterness. They must confront loneliness without believing it defines them. And this is not easy. Society does not prepare women for the reality that desire is fickle, that timing is crucial, that attraction can favor novelty over depth. It is a lesson learned the hard way, but once learned, it becomes a source of profound power. There is also a shift in mindset that is critical. Women who cope successfully stop measuring themselves against others. They stop comparing their journey to someone else's Instagram feed, to someone else's social circle, to someone else's romantic choices. They stop measuring success by male attention and start measuring it by self-fulfillment, by growth, by mastery over their own emotional landscape. They understand that desire is external, but worth is internal. And when you internalize that truth, the world loses its power to humiliate you. The sting fades, the envy fades, and the freedom to live without apology emerges. Here is another reality. Men chase youth because it is tangible. They chase novelty because it is exciting, but they return to depth when novelty fades, when excitement alone cannot sustain a relationship, when they realize that companionship, emotional intelligence, and shared vision are what truly matter. Women who understand this, who live fully, who do not settle for empty validation, are prepared. They are not desperate. They are not anxious. They are ready. And that readiness, combined with self-respect, makes them irresistible in ways society refuses to acknowledge. The coping strategies are practical too, investing in yourself, not just in appearance, but in skills, knowledge, social networks, building emotional resilience so that rejection or judgment does not derail your peace, surrounding yourself with people who respect your boundaries and celebrate your achievements, engaging in activities that bring purpose, joy, and fulfillment outside of the pursuit of romantic approval. These steps do not guarantee a partner, but they guarantee a life of dignity and growth. The final, often overlooked truth is this: life is longer than the cultural timeline allows. Men mature later than women, relationships evolve unpredictably, and opportunities arise when least expected. Women who remain patient, who cultivate themselves, who refuse to compromise on essential standards, often find partners not in desperation, but in alignment, partners who see their worth fully, who value their experience, who choose them deliberately, not out of convenience, but out of recognition of rare depth. And in that recognition, the so called leftover woman finds her power. She does not cope by bending or shrinking. She copes by standing taller, by owning her journey, by refusing to let societal timelines dictate her happiness. She does not envy the younger woman who chases. She understands that desire is complicated, that life is a marathon, not a sprint, and that true fulfillment is not about fleeting attention. It is about alignment, respect, and mutual appreciation. So, coping is not passive. It is a deliberate act of self preservation, self respect, and self mastery. It is about reclaiming narrative control, about refusing to let labels define reality. It is about understanding that timing, patience, and wisdom are as valuable as youth, if not more. And it is about embracing the truth that your value never diminishes simply because society failed to recognize it at the expected moment. It's also important to understand the mindset of the younger women who chase older men. Often they are not malicious. They are curious, adventurous, sometimes naive. They are drawn to stability and confidence, yes, but also to the thrill of being desired by someone with experience. They represent a stage of life where exploration and risk feel exciting, where emotional needs are still forming, and where boundaries are still being tested. They don't always realize that they are competing with women who have lived fully, who have faced challenges and heartbreaks, and who carry emotional sophistication that cannot be replicated overnight. This dynamic creates tension, both internal and external. The older woman watches, sometimes in silence, as younger women effortlessly capture attention that once may have seemed attainable. And she is forced to examine herself, her choices, her timing. Was she too cautious, too principled, too selective? The questions can feel endless, but the answers are rarely about personal failure. They are about societal expectations, misaligned timing, and the illusions of instantaneous attraction. And here is where coping becomes both art and science. Emotionally intelligent women learn to shift focus from external validation to internal fulfillment. They channel energy into areas that cultivate growth, creativity, and independence. They develop hobbies, expand knowledge, pursue careers, invest in physical and mental well being. And this is no mere distraction, it is deliberate self enrichment that strengthens self worth. When a woman achieves excellence in her life, she becomes magnetic, not because she is chasing, but because she is living fully. At the same time, she develops the skill of detachment. She observes patterns in relationships without getting caught in the whirlwind of jealousy or comparison. She understands that desire is a variable, not a measure of her value. The younger woman may capture attention today, but she cannot replicate maturity, resilience, or emotional intelligence. And these qualities, over time, hold far greater weight in sustaining meaningful, lasting relationships. Another aspect often overlooked is how older women redefine attractiveness. In youth, beauty is often defined narrowly: symmetry, trends, and external appeal. As women mature, attractiveness shifts to encompass confidence, presence, intellect, and emotional composure. The very qualities that younger women may lack are the ones that older women bring effortlessly to any social or romantic dynamic. But the challenge lies in communicating this value without desperation, without apology, without needing to conform to societal stereotypes of desirability. The coping process also involves confronting cultural narratives head on. Phrases like "Biwi ki umar hai nikal gai" or "Ab shadi mushkil hai" are not just casual commentary, they are attempts to script life according to a rigid timeline. Women who thrive learn to challenge these narratives internally. They replace external judgment with internal affirmation. They replace comparison with reflection. They replace fear of rejection with confidence in their own trajectory. And this is where transformation occurs. Coping becomes not just survival, but empowerment. Financial independence plays a huge role in this. Older women who have invested in their careers, financial literacy, and personal projects develop autonomy that is attractive in ways that superficial charm cannot match. Autonomy creates choice. Choice creates power. And power shifts the dynamic entirely. Women who were once silently observing from the sidelines now stand at the center, choosing partners not out of desperation, but out of alignment with values, vision, and emotional depth. At the same time, emotional resilience is built through lived experience. Failed relationships, heartbreaks, betrayals, all of these become tools of growth rather than evidence of inadequacy. Each challenge teaches discernment, each disappointment builds patience, and each mistake becomes a lesson in setting boundaries. This is why older women, though overlooked at times, often enter relationships with clarity that younger women cannot. They know what they want, what they will not tolerate, and how to navigate desire with integrity. It's also important to consider social perception. Older women face microaggressions, pity, subtle dismissal, unsolicited advice. But those who cope effectively learn to navigate these pressures with grace. They maintain standards without resentment. They command respect without aggression, and they live authentically without apology. Their confidence is quiet but powerful, magnetic without needing constant affirmation. Then there is the subtle psychological shift that occurs when women stop trying to fit into the mold that society has designed for them. They stop trying to be younger to attract attention. They stop trying to mimic spontaneity, to force playfulness, to compete with impulsivity. Instead, they cultivate presence. Presence is irresistible. Presence is grounding. Presence signals security, emotional stability, and a rare maturity that younger women, for all their energy and enthusiasm, cannot replicate. And this is where coping transforms from mere endurance to strategic empowerment. It becomes about understanding the mechanics of attraction, timing, and relational dynamics. It becomes about leveraging one's own strengths, wisdom, experience, self-sufficiency to navigate a world that often celebrates novelty over substance. Women who understand this stop envying, stop comparing, and begin to command respect effortlessly. They understand that patience is not weakness, it is strategic positioning in the grand narrative of life. And let's be honest, part of coping is redefining what success in relationships actually looks like. Younger women often chase excitement, novelty, and the thrill of conquest. But older women, those who have lived, learn that real fulfillment comes from connection, alignment, and mutual respect. They understand that a relationship built on impulsive attraction may sparkle for a season, but it rarely sustains. They seek depth, and depth cannot be rushed or manufactured. It must be recognized and nurtured. Women who cope effectively also understand the power of narrative. They rewrite the story of leftover into a story of resilience, growth, and self-knowledge. Every experience, every rejection, every social expectation that once felt like a burden becomes a lesson in discernment. They learn to say no, not out of stubbornness, but out of clarity. They learn to choose partners not out of fear of being alone, but out of recognition of value. And in this, they discover a profound freedom that youth cannot always access, the freedom to demand what they deserve. There is also a subtle mastery of timing that comes with experience. Younger women may enter relationships impulsively, driven by immediate desire or attraction. Older women, however, have learned patience. They understand that desire can fluctuate, that men's interest can be superficial at first, and that the true measure of compatibility emerges over time. They are willing to wait, to observe, to invest emotionally only where alignment exists. And this patience often positions them for relationships that are more stable, more satisfying, and more enduring than any impulsive connection could provide. Coping also involves understanding the psychology of men, particularly older men. Older men are often drawn to confidence, calmness, and self-sufficiency in women. They recognize the value of someone who is emotionally grounded, who does not seek constant validation, and who carries her life with independence and poise. These qualities are often developed over years of experience, and they are exactly what younger women, despite their energy and charm, may lack. Women who recognize this shift, the focus from competing for attention to cultivating depth and authenticity, and in doing so, they become irreplaceable. And the emotional landscape cannot be ignored. Feelings of envy, frustration, or inadequacy are natural. They surface when a younger woman attracts attention effortlessly, when social media showcases romantic success, when cultural pressure magnifies every perceived delay in one's own journey. But coping is not about suppressing these emotions. It is about observing them, understanding their origin, and choosing how to respond. Women who cope successfully do not allow temporary feelings to dictate lifelong decisions. They transform emotion into insight and insight into action. Another layer of coping is the strategic management of social circles. Women who have matured understand the importance of surrounding themselves with supportive people who respect their choices. Toxic advice, unsolicited pity, and judgmental commentary are recognized and filtered. Instead, these women build networks that reinforce their values, celebrate their achievements, and encourage continued growth. Social reinforcement becomes a tool, not a source of anxiety. Practical self-investment also plays a critical role. Learning new skills, expanding intellectual horizons, maintaining physical health, and pursuing passions all contribute to resilience. Women who invest in themselves become magnetic, not merely for appearance, but for substance. This is the kind of attraction that lasts, a presence that communicates competence, independence, and emotional stability. And when a woman carries herself with this energy, the younger woman chasing novelty may sparkle, but she cannot sustain the same level of intrigue or influence. Coping also involves understanding boundaries. Older women who have lived through disappointments learn to recognize red flags early. They understand what is acceptable, what is non-negotiable, and where compromise is healthy versus detrimental. They learn to assert their needs without guilt, to communicate clearly without fear, and to disengage from situations that do not align with their values. This level of self-knowledge is cultivated, not inherited. It comes from experience, reflection, and deliberate practice. And here is an overlooked truth. Coping is not a passive state. It is active, deliberate, and sometimes even strategic. It involves choosing where to direct energy, how to frame perception, and how to present oneself authentically without chasing approval. It involves recognizing that desire is often fleeting, timing is unpredictable, and cultural judgment is irrelevant to intrinsic value. Women who master this become not just survivors, they become architects of their own relational destiny. There is also a subtle emotional intelligence at play. These women can observe without being consumed by comparison. They understand the dynamics of attraction and social interaction without needing to participate in every competition. They discern intention from impulse, depth from surface charm, compatibility from temporary chemistry. And this discernment, developed over years of reflection and experience, becomes a powerful tool in navigating not just relationships, but life itself. Coping also means embracing self love as a practice rather than a concept. It is about celebrating one's own achievements, finding joy in personal growth, and refusing to allow societal timelines to dictate self worth. The more a woman invests in herself, the less she relies on external validation, and the more she becomes an anchor in her own life. A stable, confident presence that does not waver in the face of fleeting trends or cultural pressure. And importantly, women who cope successfully shift their mindset from scarcity to abundance. They recognize that love, respect, and connection are not finite resources. One man's choice does not diminish another's value. One younger woman's success does not negate years of growth, wisdom, or resilience. This shift from competition to abundance is liberating. It removes fear, it diminishes envy, and it allows women to operate from a place of confidence, not anxiety. So here's the truth that no one tells you loudly enough. Being labeled leftover is not a curse. It is an invitation to reclaim your worth, to embrace your experience, to cultivate depth that no fleeting youth or superficial attention can ever match. The women who cope successfully do not bend, do not chase, and do not apologize for their timing. They rise above comparison, above envy, and above society's rigid timelines. They understand that their value is intrinsic, immutable, and undeniable. You are not defined by the men who overlook you, nor by the younger women who temporarily steal attention. You are defined by your resilience, your wisdom, your patience, and your ability to navigate life with grace. Every rejection, every disappointment, every societal judgment is simply a test of alignment, and those who pass it emerge stronger, more radiant, and irresistible in ways that cannot be replicated or rushed. So, to every woman listening, remember this: your journey is yours alone. Do not measure it against someone else's timeline. Do not let fleeting attraction dictate your self worth. Stand tall, cultivate your depth, protect your heart, and live your life unapologetically. Because the woman who understands her value, who honors her own growth, and who refuses to settle for less than she deserves, she does not age into irrelevance. She evolves into power, into presence, and into a force that commands respect, admiration, and desire, not because she chased it, but because she earned it. You are not left over. You are refined, you are powerful, you are unstoppable. And when you finally recognize that, no one, neither time nor society, nor fleeting attention, can ever diminish your shine.